The cameras had long stopped rolling, the bright stage lights replaced by the gentle silver glow of the moon, yet for Wang and Shen Yue, the night was far from over. The city lay in quiet slumber, its streets dimly lit by scattered street lamps, when the first whispers began to spread. Someone had seen them together, not on a set, not at an event, but in the most unlikely of places, just after midnight, and far from the prying eyes of the industry. The exclusive photos began circulating online within hours, grainy yet unmistakable, showing Dylan and Shen Yue stepping out of a narrow side street, the shadows of tall buildings framing them like the edges of a secret stage. Dylan wore a black hoodie pulled low, the brim of his cap casting his eyes into shadow, while Shen Yue was wrapped in an oversized coat, her hair falling loosely over her shoulders. The timestamp on the leaked images revealed it was nearly 2 in the morning, a time when even the most restless parts of the city had quieted. Social media exploded instantly, with fans dissecting every detail, from the way their hands brushed as they walked to the almost imperceptible glance they shared before disappearing into the backseat of a waiting car. Theories multiplied by the minute. Was this a casual catch-up between old friends, or a carefully orchestrated meeting meant to be hidden from the public eye? One eyewitness claimed they saw the two at a secluded riverside cafe just minutes before the photographs were taken. The cafe, known for its dim lights and late hours, was the perfect place for quiet conversations. According to the source, Dylan arrived first, sitting at a corner table where the soft glow of a single candle flickered between them. 10 minutes later, Shen Yue appeared, slipping inside with a cautious glance over her shoulder. When she sat down, there was no hesitation in her movements, no awkward distance, just the kind of familiarity that comes from years of shared history. The source described how they leaned in close, speaking in hushed tones, the outside world seemingly falling away as their words filled the air between them. Dylan's expression shifted from guarded to softened, while Shen Yue's eyes glimmered with a mix of nostalgia and something unspoken. At one point, she reached across the table, her hand resting lightly over his, and for a moment they stayed like that, unmoving, as if both were afraid the moment might vanish if they broke it too soon. When they finally left the cafe, they walked side by side along the empty river path. The streetlights cast their long shadows over the pavement, their footsteps perfectly in sync. They spoke little now, the silence between them holding a different kind of weight, as if what had been said inside was enough for the night. But just before they reached the waiting car, Dylan turned to her, murmuring something that made her pause. She looked up at him, her lips parting as though to respond, yet no words came. Instead, she smiled faintly, a smile that was both tender and bittersweet. By morning, every gossip outlet had picked up the story. Fans pored over the photos, matching them against past sightings, noting how Dylan's hoodie was the same one he had worn in an older Candid where Shen Yue had been present. Others compared the subtle body language, the way Shen Yue tilted her head when listening to him, a gesture that had often been caught on camera during their drama shoots years before. In the middle of all this speculation, one particularly observant fan pointed out something that changed everything. A reflection in one of the leaked images, caught in a shop window behind them, revealed another figure a few steps away, partially hidden in the dark. This raised a new question, one that sent shockwaves through their fandom. Was this meeting truly private, or had someone been following them all along, capturing each moment from the shadows? The location itself added another layer to the mystery. That riverside cafe was not a random choice. Years ago, during the early days of their careers, Dylan and Shen Yue had been spotted there, laughing over coffee after a long rehearsal. For them to return to the same spot now, years later, could hardly be a coincidence. It felt almost like a deliberate loop in their story, a silent acknowledgement of something that had never truly ended. As the frenzy continued, those closest to the industry began to weigh in. Anonymous crew members spoke of subtle changes in both their demeanors in recent weeks. Dylan, usually composed and guarded, had been caught staring off into space between takes, his expression unreadable. Shen Yue, on the other hand, seemed brighter, lighter, as though a quiet weight had been lifted. Whether this was the rekindling of an old flame, a conversation meant to bring closure, or simply a night of shared memories, the truth remains locked away between them. But one thing is certain. That late-night meeting has reignited a storm of curiosity, the kind that will not fade easily. Every glance they share from this point forward will be scrutinized, every coincidental appearance questioned. And somewhere, perhaps in another quiet corner of the city, Dylan and Shen Yue know exactly what they discussed that night, exactly what promises or confessions passed between them. For the rest of us, we are left with fragments, photographs, and an enduring question. Was this the beginning of something new, or the final chapter of a story the world thought it already knew? By the time the sun rose the next morning, the city was already buzzing. The leaked photographs had traveled from private fan groups to every major gossip page, sparking heated debates. But there was something different about this story. It was not just about a chance sighting or speculation. It carried a weight, a sense of history between two people whose names had been tied together for years. That day, the Riverside Cafe became the quiet epicenter of whispered questions. Locals who had been there the night before started speaking to reporters, each adding their own fragments to the growing narrative. One barista described how Dylan and Shen Yue had sat for over an hour, their drinks untouched for long stretches, both leaning in so closely that even the flicker of the candles seemed to hesitate between them. He said their voices were soft, yet intense, as though every word carried a piece of something too precious to be spoken aloud in full. Another witness claimed to have seen Shen Yue's expression change halfway through the meeting. At first, her smile had been polite, almost guarded, but then Dylan had said something that made her still completely, her eyes lowering as if to hide what she felt. She nodded slowly, then looked up at him with a gaze that was neither angry nor joyful, but something more complicated. As night fell again, fans began connecting the dots. A few noticed that Dylan's filming schedule had unexpectedly cleared for 2 days before this meeting, while Shen Yue had quietly canceled a public appearance. Their movements now seemed far from accidental. The internet was convinced they had planned this long before anyone caught them. But the mystery deepened when a second set of images surfaced, ones no one had seen before. These were taken from across the river, showing the two standing at the railing, the moonlight cutting across the water and catching the outline of their faces. In one image, Dylan appeared to be laughing, his head slightly bowed toward her, while in another, Shen Yue's hand rested briefly on his arm. Though the photographs were blurred, the intimacy was undeniable. For those who knew their past, the symbolism of the riverside was not lost. Years ago, during a break from filming, they had been spotted there in almost the exact same spot, talking quietly while the rest of the cast had gone back to the hotel. That moment had been dismissed then as a casual conversation. Now, in the context of their reunion, it seemed almost like a deliberate return to where something had begun. Industry insiders began speaking in guarded tones. One crew member from a recent project said Dylan had been unusually distracted during rehearsals in the week before, glancing at his phone more than usual, his responses to questions delayed. Another mentioned that Shen Yue had been seen scrolling through old photos on her phone between takes, her expression unreadable. The public could only guess what was exchanged in that late-night conversation. Was it an apology for the time they lost, a confession of feelings kept silent for too long, or an attempt to find closure before moving on? Whatever it was, both of them walked away from that meeting changed. The way Dylan held the car door for her, the brief pause before she stepped inside, the way she looked back at him through the window, all of it played on repeat in the minds of those who had seen the pictures. And as the days passed, no statement came from either side. No denial, no confirmation. Just silence, which, in a way, spoke louder than anything they could have said.